Yes, good morning from my side. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, we can see them.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Tiia Kekäläinen. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in Gerontology Research Center in the Faculty of Sport and Health Sciences in University of Jyväskylä, but currently I'm also affiliated with University of Münster in Germany. So that is why I'm giving this presentation from Germany. In this presentation, I will first take the opportunity to briefly explain to you what is gerontology, and then talk more about my own research related to physical activity, mood, and cognition. In my own research, this is quite new topic for me, so I don't have that much results yet, but I'm going to more focus on my assessments and how I hope to study this topic in the future. But first about gerontology. It may not be familiar word to everyone, but it means study of aging. And it is sometimes mixed up to geriatrics, so it is important to separate them because geriatrics is the branch of medicine related to medical care for older adults. But gerontology is multidisciplinary research area. We have all aspects of aging related to biological, psychological, sociological, health-related, sport-related, economical aspects, and so on. I come from the Faculty of Sport and Health Sciences, so that is why my research is more related to health and sport topics in terms of aging. Even though studying aging may sound simple, the terminology related to it is surprisingly confusing because, as I said, gerontology is study of aging, but in Finnish we may talk both about ikääntyminen, which simply means the accumulation of age that starts when we born, and we all accumulate it in the same speed. But then in Finnish, vanheneminen, as aging, it means the processes that over time lead to harmful changes in functioning of the body. And it is something that we do not all get in the same speed, and also different parts of the body or different functions do not age in the same speed. And there is no clear definition when aging as vanheneminen begins, but usually it's thought that when we reach teenage and the developmental peak, after that aging begins. Then old age is also very confusing term because usually it's related to the last age phase before death. It can be said that it's around last 10 years before the death, but traditionally the age limit for old age has been 65 years, and that's because it's also the retirement age. But nowadays in Finland, people who are 65, they still have around 20 years life expectancy, and that gives them at least 10 years life before actual old age begins. So this is something that we talk a lot in gerontology nowadays, that the current limit for old age should be somewhere around 80 and not at age 65. So when we talk about gerontology or aging, it typically evokes images like this. So very old people in a nursing home. And of course, these are part of gerontology. But as it is study of aging and not only old age, and also old age is much more than just nursing homes, gerontology is much broader topic. Here are just some examples of our research teams in the Gerontology Research Center. The bolded parts are our main research teams, and then there are some examples of different ongoing research projects. So we study, for example, active aging, cohort differences between current and previous older people, master athletes and places of active aging. Then we have more biological studies focusing on hormonal aging, menopause, and genes. Then aging is not something that just starts at some point, but of course all early life factors and the whole life course affects it. So that's why we study also things already from pregnancy to early childhood and how these affect later phases in life. And then also services and care are part of gerontology. But this just an example to give you a little idea what gerontology can be. Then I go to my own research topic and we'll talk a little bit about physical activity, mood, and cognitive performance in daily life. We all know that physical activity is important and it can be defined as any bodily movement that requires energy expenditure. It's important to note that exercise is one type of physical activity, but it's usually defined as physical activity that is carried out for a specific purpose. So it's intentional physical activity. But physical activity is much broader thing than just exercise. It can be divided to different domains, such as leisure, transport, domestic work, but it can also be thought from the perspective of intensity or type, frequency, duration, and so on. And actually, most physical activity for both adults and older adults comes from daily activities and not intentional exercise. And it's usually light intensity activity, something that you do during your housework activities, for example. In physical activity recommendations, there are clear recommendations to how much moderate or vigorous physical activity you should get per week. But it is also said that replacing sedentary time with physical activity of any intensity, including also these light intensity activities, provides health benefits. But it's typically physical activity is asked from participants with questionnaires, and it can be quite difficult to assess how much you get light intensity physical activity. It's easier to say that how often you exercise or what types of exercises you do and for how long, but it could be quite difficult to say that how much I spent time yesterday not being sedentary. So that is why recently there has been a lot of development in device-based measures such as accelerometers. There is an example of this kind of device in the picture. This is the UKK RM42 accelerometer that I have used in my studies. So it is the small device under the belt. We can put it inside the belt and then participants can use the belt on their hip for their waking hours. So it assesses the body acceleration and all body movement. So the idea is pretty much the same as in commercial sport watches, for example. Why I am interested in mood and cognitive performance? Well, as you can imagine, they both are important for overall quality of life of people and also for overall functioning in daily life. They both are also traditionally assessed in studies and also in practice with one-time tests, such as one-time memory test or with questionnaires. But I have a little bit different aspect for this part, and that is why I use ecological momentary assessments. It's called also experience sampling method or ambulatory assessment. And it means that we repeatedly test same things over time in real environment. In the figure, there is an example. So there are 6 participants. They are tested 3 times per day for 7 days. This is quite typical design for EMA studies. So the dots are the results of each test for a participants. So the test could be, for example, a cognitive test or a question about your mood. What are the advantages of this method? Are that we assess people in real time, so they don't have to remember how their mood was, for example, yesterday, but we ask, how are you currently feeling, or what are you currently doing, or they do cognitive tests in that current moment. We also assess same things multiple times, so we got a good time series data. And because we assess people in their actual daily environment and not in a laboratory, it has better ecological validity. It could be, for example, that someone may be okay enough in a cognitive test in an optimal laboratory setting, but then in daily life, when there are more distractions and you may be more tired, for example, then you have more variation in cognitive performance. With this kind of data, we can study both between person and within person associations. So, for example, in the figure, the lines are averages for each people. So, of course, we can compare participants to each other based on their average. But what I'm most interested in is the within person variation and why sometimes you score higher or lower than your own average. So what are the reasons why the dot is sometimes above your own average or sometimes below it? This is not a new method, so ecological momentary assessment has been done for a long time, previously with diaries, but nowadays it's possible to do this with smartphones. It's easy because people carry them with them all the time in any case, so you can randomly schedule them to get a notification that now it would be time to do a test or answer questions. And this methodology is very rapidly increasing and used a lot in studies nowadays, but not that much among older adults. And I think it's a shame because also most older people nowadays have smartphones and the proportion is increasing every year. So even though now maybe not everyone has a smartphone, but in 5 years it's most likely that even more people have smartphones and it will be possible to use these methods also among older people. That is why I have recently collected a pilot study with older participants just to see how feasible these methods are and also to interview them and ask about their experiences, that how they thought that the study was and do they have any recommendations or suggestions how to develop the methods for bigger studies. Here are examples of cognitive tests you can do with smartphone. I had these in my pilot study. So the participants got notification 3 times per day for 10 days to their smartphone that now it would be a time to do some tests. They had these 3 cognitive tests each time and also a couple of questions, but in total it took around 3 to 4 minutes to complete the whole assessment at one time. So around 10 minutes per day with 3 test sessions. So it's not that long. But for example, working memory test, there they saw numbers and then had a question that is this the same number as the previous one? In spatial working memory test, there were yellow dots. They first had to watch the pattern of dots and then repeat it in the right order. If they got it correct, then the number of dots in the pattern increased. And in perceptual speed test, they had to select the right symbol for the number. Finally, I will show you some results. Previously, I have investigated this topic in a younger, middle-aged sample. And in that sample, we focused on within-person associations to see when participants had better cognitive performance compared to their own average. And what we found out was that when they were more physically active, they had faster processing speed. So replacing sedentary time with physical activity in any intensity was beneficial for the processing speed task. About the size of the effect, adding 8 minutes of active time to the 20 minutes time window before cognitive test had around the same effect as being 1 year younger in this age group. And we also found that in addition to replacing sedentary time with physical activity in any intensity, it was also beneficial if you were physically active with higher intensity. Then in my pilot study, participants were aged 65 to 85, and we found quite similar preliminary results that if you replace sedentary time with physical activity in any intensity, it was associated with faster performance in working memory task. In the adult sample, we studied also the effects on affect and also purpose in life, kind of momentary purpose in life, that how purpose-driven you feel at the moment. And we found out that replacing sedentary time with physical activity in any intensity, as well as being physically active with higher intensity, were associated also with higher positive affect and feeling more purpose-driven. There were also other situational factors that were related to positive affect. For example, in weekends when you are with someone and not alone, and later within the day, positive affect was higher. Then on the contrary, on weekdays and not at weekends, when you are not at home and earlier within the day, participants felt more purpose-driven than their own average. And in this analysis, we found that these associations are also bidirectional, so that physical activity before the EMA questions are associated with better mood and feeling more purpose-driven, but also when you feel better and are more purpose-driven, then you are more likely to be physically active after the assessment. So I conclude with a take-home message that when you need better cognitive performance, take a physically active break. Thank you.